After you introduced yourself and the team, and you build a connection with your participants, it's time to dive in and really get the good insights that you need for your research goals. You want to have a good conversation with your participant and observe what they're doing. A great way to think about having the conversation is seeking stories from the users. A good way to spark a meaningful story is to ask the user about extremes. For example, you might want to ask them, tell me about a time when you did your task and it went absolutely great. It was really fantastic and you were surprised by the good outcome you had. Why was that so? Listen to what they tell you and try to figure out what were the key elements that made this experience so great. Similarly, you also want to ask them about a time when they really had a big nightmare about it. So you might want to ask them, tell me about a time when you did your task and it was an absolute nightmare, went really bad. And again, listen to the story they tell you and try to understand why they had such a big pain point with this. As you're listening to their story, dig deeper with open-ended questions. If you want to focus on something specific in this story, you can ask them, please tell me about a time you did this and this. You might want to ask them to show you if they have a screen in front of them, or walk you through an example to clarify. And don't be afraid to probe. The key question here is why. You want to ask why enough times until you have a good understanding of the reason behind the experience. As the user is telling you their story, you really want to sit there and listen. Listening is important because remember, you are the novice, the user is the expert. You want to learn from them. You can't learn if you're the one talking all the time. Some best practices for listening, of course, include not talking too much. Let the participants speak. You're not there to sell any solution. You're there to understand them and build empathy. Also, don't jump in too quickly. Do not interrupt them in the middle of the sentence and give them a few seconds at the end of their sentences and wait, they might have something else in store for you. You also want to ask open-ended questions and not lead them in a closed way. Similarly, hypothetical questions are not good for seeking stories because users often have trouble thinking about something abstract. So point them and guide them towards tangible examples of their experience. And even though you have your research script, which should have key points of topics that you want to cover, sometimes a conversation in a user interview can go quite off track. So let the participant guide you and just follow him along. Besides these techniques, body language is also very important to elicit a great story from the user. You want to hold their eye contact. You want to respect their personal space. So you want to be open and engaged with them. While seeking stories is a great way to listen and build empathy with the user, what the user says and what they actually do can be quite different. This is why observing them in action is so important. People might not always verbalize what they are doing, and they might not remember and rationalize their behavior. So don't trust them too much if they tell you how they did a certain thing, but focus on the actual behavior. This allows you to capture what happens in reality much closer to than if they just tell you. So you can listen to their beliefs and their attitudes and gain empathy that way, but you should also observe the behavior to get a good understanding of what they actually do. Now that we talked about techniques, how to elicit great stories and also observe the user in action, let's look at a field visit that I did recently. See what I did well and where I could have improved on, and focus on the techniques that I just described.
That travel bit you talked about is pretty interesting. Do you mind talking a little bit more about that? Like how does travel look in your job responsibilities?
Mm-hmm. So I travel about maybe 25% of the time. Mm-hmm. So it might be 1 week within a month. Mm-hmm. That might be some regular frequency. Some mm-hmm. months will be more travel, some months might be less. Mm-hmm. And I usually go for some type of workshop, a design thinking workshop, mm-hmm. and then I come back and then I get to relax and go back home and mm-hmm. then do it again.
Okay. Yeah, I remember in our first chat, you said that you actually have a lot of expense reports. So for this next section, it would be great if I could just observe how you do the expensing, and just imagine me as being a fly on the wall, and I might chime in with questions, but be as natural as you would do the expenses, and I will just observe how you do the kind of things for this kind of task.
So as you can see, I have a lot of receipts here, and this is all from my latest trip. And so these might be things I buy from my personal credit card. And so as you can see, there's like lunches, and I paid for parking and things like that. So a lot of these are very small amounts, but you may have like a tip included or things like that. And so what I do is go and paste all of these receipts on paper, so then I can scan them into the computer, and I might write a little note as to what it is, so that when I go back to do my expense report, I'll remember, oh, that was lunch, or this was dinner. So that might be something I'll do. So here I will start by creating a new expense report.
Okay, so we just watched the video, and I made some notes on what I did well and what I could improve on, right? So first of all, I led a little bit in the beginning by saying, oh, that sounds very interesting, right? While that sounds trivial, you want to stay as neutral as possible, because if you mention already a positive thing, that might lead the user on to focus on that more. So stay as neutral as possible. That's something I could have improved on. I thought I did a good job at asking the open-ended questions. So instead of asking a very specific, closed-ended, how do you do travel expensing, I asked, tell me more about this, right? So this is open-ended, lets the user take the story wherever she wants to take it, which is a better way than asking a closed-ended question. I also made sure I observed her doing expenses in action and not just listen to how she would normally do it. This allows me to connect the dots between what she tells she's doing and what she's actually doing. Very important. As you're coming to an end with your research activity and the participant might be getting eager to leave because they're running out of time, remember a good wrap-up is also important. So you want to thank the participants for their time. Make sure you ask the participants before they leave if they have any last questions or comments. Sometimes at the end of a research session, you'd be surprised some good last insights you get right before they leave. Maybe they have something to add, maybe not. Either way, after that, thank them for their time, assure them that their data will be kept confidential, and if you have any gift incentives for their participation, make sure they know how to get it or give it to them right there. So let's go back to that same interview we just saw and see how I did the wrap-up.
We're almost out of time, but it was very informational. We learned a lot. Is there anything else before we go and wrap up that you'd like to mention at this point?
Sure. I'm actually trying a new thing with my receipts because, as you can see, a lot of these papers can be kind of unwieldy and trying to manage it. So right after I buy something or get a receipt, I will take a picture on my mobile phone and create an album that's specific for that trip. And so then I have all my receipts organized, and so I can email them directly or airdrop them directly onto my computer.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, and can you elaborate a little bit on why you choose to now take pictures?
Well, that's to keep it organized. Before I used to stuff them all in my wallet, and then I would have to go through them and figure out which ones were personal, which ones were not. But now if I do it right after I go to a restaurant and I get the receipt, and then I'll take a picture, and then I'll know that those are the ones that I need to expense.
Okay, thanks so much. We're out of time, but really interesting the last part when you mentioned that you're actually switching from paper to taking pictures. We're definitely gonna look at the benefits that you mentioned there. Let's call it here. You're gonna get your gift certificate via email from the recruiter, so let me know if there's any problems that you have, and if you have any follow-up questions, you have my email, so you can let me know. And again, it was so great to have you in the study. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So we just watched the video of the wrap-up, and there were a few things that stood out to me. So first of all, we didn't have to end right on the dot, and I asked the participants if there were any last comments, and she actually had a pretty interesting example. So that was good that I did that and left the space for her to add anything that was on her mind. One thing that didn't go so well is, again, I led her a little bit by a positive emotion that I expressed, right? Where I told her, oh, that looks really interesting. So again, you want to stay as neutral as possible and don't lead the user with anything like that. And I also asked why a couple of times to dig a little bit deeper. So again, in the wrap-up, if there is something interesting that comes up, make sure to ask at least a couple of whys to understand what's going on exactly.